Welcome to the Simply Oishi channel. I'm Yuki, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make Shiro-an. Shiro means white and an means bean paste in Japanese. An is also called anko, and I'll be calling Shiro-an anko in this video. Shiro-an is an essential ingredient in making nerikiri wagashi as well as other Japanese sweets. This is nerikiri wagashi, so if you're taking my online wagashi course, please make sure to follow this video to make Shiro-an before you join the class. If you're interested in joining my class, please see the descriptions below or follow my Facebook page. There are several ways to make Shiro-an, and I'm going to show you the traditional way. Some procedures can be omitted to make it easy. So if you feel the whole process is too complicated or too time-consuming, you can make it the easy way. So let's get started. The ingredients are quite simple, just beans and sugar, and some baking soda, which is optional. I'm using white kidney beans as they're commonly used in the anko here in Japan. But you can use any other white beans like navy beans or lima beans, which is also called butter beans. If you're using lima beans, you'll have to peel the skin off after soaking it. In my recipe, we use the same amount of sugar as the dry beans, but you can reduce the amount according to your liking. Just don't reduce it substantially, as it will change the texture and the taste of the anko. The sugar also acts as a preservative to keep the anko longer. This was important during the times when there were no refrigeration system. White sugar is to be used for Shiro-an, as we don't want it to be colored dark. Baking soda will help soften the bean skin, but you don't have to use it if you don't have it. Don't use more than 0.7% of the total weight, as it will leave an unpleasant taste if you add too much. These are the tools I use to make Shiro-an. Scale for measuring the ingredients, 1 medium-sized bowl for soaking the dry beans, 2 large-sized bowls for soaking the bean paste, 1 pot for cooking and kneading the beans, a rubber spatula for straining and kneading, a coarse strainer, and a fine strainer like a flour sifter, a lint-free sturdy cotton cloth like a cheesecloth, and a tray for cooling the anko. For the pot, I'm using this round bottom pot called the bozu nabe. Nabe means pot in Japanese, and bozu means bald head because it resembles the head of a bald man. Okay. The benefit of using this pot is that it cooks evenly because there's more circulation in the pot because it's round. And when you're kneading the anko, you can use a spatula against the curve, so it's more unlikely to burn when you're kneading. Okay, but if you don't have this round bottom pot, you can use a flat bottom pot or whatever you have. That's perfectly fine. Just be careful not to burn the anko when you're kneading. Okay. For the strainers, I'm going to be using 2 kinds of strainers. One is a coarse one, which is like 20 to 30 mesh, and the other one is a fine strainer. I think this is like 65 mesh. Mesh refers to how many dots there is in a square inch. So the larger the number is, the finer the strainer is. If you don't have a strainer, a fine strainer, or if you only have 1 strainer, you can just use whatever you have, like this. That's perfectly fine. Just start with whatever you have. You don't have to buy it yet. The reason my strainer is flat like this, I have this frame that I can use for both of the strainers, which comes in really handy. Before soaking the beans, wash them thoroughly. Although they may look clean, there may be some dust on the surface. Once the beans are washed, put it in a bowl together with plenty of water and let it soak for one night. Do not soak for longer than a day, as the beans may start to sprout, especially during the warm weather. If you can't cook the beans after you've soaked it, store the beans in the refrigerator. Now you can see that the beans are fully swollen. Pick out any beans that are not swollen. The anko will turn out to be brownish in color if the beans are not fully swollen. You can see how big they have become. Now the beans are ready to be cooked. I'm going to use a pot over the stove, but you can also use a pressure cooker or an electric cooker too. Follow the instructions on your cooker for the length of time to cook. Place the beans in a pot and add enough fresh water to cover the top. You don't want to add too much water as it will cause the beans to dance around. And this may cause the beans to burst in the middle, which will make the anko more stickier. Turn the heat on to high. Once it reaches boiling point, turn the heat off. Drain and rinse briefly. Put the beans back in the pot with fresh water. Bring to boil on high heat. Like I said, add just enough water to cover the beans. Once it reaches boiling point, add the baking soda and stir. Simmer until the beans are soft, around 30 minutes depending on the type of beans or how old the beans are. Larger beans and older beans will take longer to cook. At this point, boil some water in a kettle or a pot, as you will need to add hot water to the pot if the water level gets low, which is about every 10 minutes. Make sure that the beans are always covered with water. You can also put a lid on the pot to keep the water from boiling down. Remove the scum when necessary. Once the beans are soft, turn off the heat. You can tell if the beans are ready if you can crush them easily between your fingers. Now it's time to strain the beans. If you don't have a strainer or a sieve, you can puree the beans with a little bit of cooking liquid in a food processor until it's smooth. Put a strainer over a large bowl and press the beans through using a spatula. You can add water to help it go through. Just be careful not to spill the water containing the bean paste. This is the reason why you use a big bowl. After you've finished straining it, let it sit for a while until the paste sinks down. Then pour out just the water. Be extremely careful that you don't pour out the bean paste that you've just made. After you have a paste, use a finer strainer, 50 mesh and up, and push the paste through it with water again. Make sure you do not let the water pour over the bowl. If you don't have a fine strainer, you can skip this process. I'm going to fast forward as you've already seen how it's been done. Once the bean paste has sunken down, pour out the water on top. Add fresh water and let it stand for a few minutes until the paste has sunken down, and pour out the water again. Be careful not to pour out the bean paste. Add fresh water and repeat this process until the water is clear, about 3 times in total. Don't overdo it as the bean paste will lose its flavor. This process is called sarashi, which means to soak or submerge. The purpose of this process is to take the excess starch from the anko to give a fine texture. This is how to make anko that will melt in your mouth. Most recipes now skip this process, and you can still make anko by not following this procedure, but the anko will be a bit stickier. If you're skipping this process, you can jump to kneading the anko. Before kneading, you will have to remove the excess water from the bean paste. Place a strainer over a bowl and put a sturdy, fine cotton cloth over it. Then pour the bean paste over the cloth. And wring out the water with all your might. Squeeze as hard as possible. Once you've done this, open the cloth and mix with a spatula. There may still be some water in the center. Wring again. The less water you have in the paste, the less time you will spend kneading the anko. You'll be surprised at how much water there still is left. Now you have the nama-an, which means fresh bean paste. Because it doesn't have any sugar in it, it won't keep long. So if you'd like to store it, put it in a freezer. Place the nama-an and sugar in a pot and mix well. Then turn the heat to medium and stir until the sugar has dissolved and the water comes out. It's better to use a copper or aluminum pot, as stainless steel pot is easy to burn when kneading. You will notice that it looks glossy at first, but it will eventually start to look matte. It will bubble and become like lava, so you should be wearing long sleeves top in case it splashes to your arms, and maybe even gloves. Don't use low heat as it will take longer to cook, and that will cause to darken the color. Make sure to scrape the side of the pot while you're kneading, as the paste will crystallize and you will end up with a crumbly paste. You know that it's done when you scoop up the paste with a spatula and drop it. It will form a peak. Once the beans are cooked, turn out on a tray in scoops and let it cool. Do not leave it in the pot, as the anko will dry out and get hard. Once it's cool, wrap the anko tightly in a cling film to store. I usually wrap it in 100 grams or 200 gram portions and put it in a Ziploc bag to freeze it. You can see that 100 grams of dry beans will make approximately 200 grams of anko. If you're making it in bigger batches, divide the dough in portions to store. Today I use 100 grams of dry beans for demonstration purposes, but I usually use about 200 to 300 grams of beans at one go. And here you have it, the traditional Shiro-an. I hope you found this video informative. Please excuse me if I looked a bit tense because this is my very first video that I did by myself. And I hope to get more videos out in the future. So if you're interested in wagashi making and Japanese cooking, please subscribe to my channel. And if you're interested in doing online interactive classes and offline classes here at my kitchen in Tokyo, please visit my website and Facebook page for more details. Thanks for watching and hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.